It may have been the first day without pads, but it was definitely not a day without fireworks as Derek Carr leads a big touchdown drive. We got all that and a little bit of lanyard for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to be diving into training camp day 10. We are here live on the campus of UC Irvine, covering yet another day of New Orleans Saints training camp. Out of pads today after 5 straight padded practices. They'll go back into pads tomorrow before the day off on Tuesday. Here's what we're going to break down today. The New Orleans Saints have had even more names added to a very long and it feels like ever expanding list of injuries. We'll highlight those as well as some of the other news and notes from the day. I'll tell you about Jake Haener and a few of the other standouts from today's training camp practice. And we're going to kick it all off with the big time standout, which again, for the second day in a row, was quarterback Derek Carr with a little bit of help from his friend Mason Tipton. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, where you can make every moment more. They're making sure that the sports keep sporting all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com, where right now they're giving away a free boost or bonus to all customers all summer long. You won't want to miss out on that because there's something new for everyone every day all summer long over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in to everybody who's catching the show live or who's catching the show later, whether it's your first time or your next time being here. We really, really appreciate you. Don't forget to send in your questions because we'll have another episode tomorrow morning breaking down more of this day 10 of training camp, but also want to answer some of your questions as well. So feel free to leave questions here throughout or send me questions as or after you listen to this so that I can try to address some of those questions in tomorrow's episode. Today, I want to focus on Derek Carr to open up the show. He had, I think, his best day of practice in this year's training camp yesterday on Saturday, which I thought was also one of his best overall practices with the New Orleans Saints since he has been in New Orleans. And today he followed up on that with another big performance. Now, look, it was a lighter day today. You could tell that the intensity kind of ticked down a little bit. The physicality ticked down a little bit, especially because they were out of pads, back in the shirts and shells today. And so with that, things maybe kind of worked a little bit lighter, but they'll be right back into pads tomorrow. And despite all that, they still got competitive again today. And today, the way that they fed the competition was that they put 1:40 on the clock. They said, all right, it's the end of the half. The team is down 6 points. Go down, score a touchdown, kick an extra point, and take the lead going into the half. That was a scenario that was effectively the coup de grace of tonight, right? This was the big main event of today's practice. And here's how Derek Carr did in that situation. He went 6 of 6 on a touchdown drive, including some nice completions to Chris Olave, a little screen pass that went to Alvin Kamara where he picked up some additional yards, but unfortunately a holding penalty brought that back. So they had to kind of scrap back forward with that as well. And a big 30-plus yard bomb between Derek Carr to Mason Tipton, something that we saw the two nearly connect on at an earlier team drill at an earlier time. This was with Jordan Howden in coverage over the top. So really, really nice stuff there, going up against a very talented, young, athletic, fast safety in getting that play done. The way that the play went down, Derek Carr takes the snap and simply Mason Tipton just flies. He simply runs as fast as he can down the right sideline, got on the backside, got over the top of Jordan Howden, and boom, was able to make the reception there. Mason Tipton said that he actually touched the pylon on his way down. He felt that he scored a touchdown. The refs who were in session, this was the third day, I believe, with referees, also the last day with referees up until the Saints welcome the San Francisco 49ers here late next week following their first preseason game, which is this coming weekend, by the way. Yeah, we're that close. But he went 6 of 6 on that drive, probably got a touchdown there. They put it down at the 1. Jamal Williams ran it in for a touchdown. Charlie Smith missed the extra point, so they would have gone in tied based on the scenario that they were working with. But still really good stuff from Derek Carr, who, look, one of the big things that we talked about when the Saints signed him an offseason ago was that those sort of end of half, end of game drives, those heroics, those are a part of Derek Carr's brand. This is what he does. He tends to be calm in these situations and works very well in these situations. We saw him do the same thing in mandatory minicamp before that wrapped up. Now you see that kind of bridge over here with Derek Carr leading the way for this big touchdown drive that would have given them the lead going into halftime. So really good stuff. I want to highlight a couple of other things from why I think that this drive is important, even though it was in shorts, it was in, shorts and shells, and it wasn't in pads. This one was a drive to me that showed Derek Carr's kind of command of the offense as well, right? Minute and 40 left on the clock. You're having to roll through everything pretty quickly. You got to get up. You got to get the call in on the huddle. You got to get everybody broke. You got to get everybody on the line. You got to run the motion. You got to run the play action if there is play action, all that kind of stuff. So every bit of those bells and whistles he orchestrated to a T. The only hiccup that the offensive unit has was a holding penalty on Chris Olave on the Alvin Kamara screen, which was not anything to do with the team's ability to be ready. That had everything to do with Chris Olave's desire to stop Alvin Kamara from being tackled, and I'm not mad at that. Derek Carr completed his first pass short for about 10 yards to Foster Morrow. Then he completed another pass for a few yards to Chris Olave. Then they had the screen that picked up a good amount of yardage, but then came back a little bit with the holding penalty. It wasn't a full 10-yard penalty, but it did reduce how much yardage they actually gained from that screen. A check down to Jamal Williams, a pass to Cedric Wilson on an out route where he picked up some additional and nice yards, took them from the opposing 47 up to from their 47 up to the opposing 34. Then you saw the big completion from the 34 down to the 1, so about 33 yards to Mason Tipton, and then Jamal Williams with a run up the middle. So really good orchestration of the offense, really good command of getting everybody to the line, in and out of the huddle, and then good execution out there as well. No, the ball didn't go anywhere that looked like it was in danger. It was good, what I would call shot selection. That's what we say in the NBA is shot selection in terms of, where you pick to take your shots and stuff like that. I thought it was good shot selection or throw selection by Derek Carr and all those things. And so I just thought that this was a good thing to see at this point in camp because they're adding new stuff every day. Dennis Allen said that he's happy, although not satisfied with where the understanding of the new offense is right now. He's happy with it, but they're still adding stuff. He said that there's new formations, new plays, and new motion, new wrinkles every day that they're still adding into this offense. So this is only going to grow and grow and grow, but it was good to see from this point, Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints go out there and still be able to move the ball down the field. And they did it too by, remember, Rashid Shaheed still not out on the field. They said that they were hoping to get him back out on the field today. Didn't happen. We'll see if he's out on the field tomorrow with pads, dealing with that hamstring tightness, held out of the last two practices because of a precautionary measure more than the actual injury itself. But with that, the first team wide receivers were, typically speaking, Chris Olave, Mason Tipton, and Cedric Wilson. And each one of those guys had a reception on this drive. Each one of those guys had an impact on this drive. And then you add to the three of them the fact that Alvin Kamara had a reception, that Foster Morrow had a reception, and that Jamal Williams had a reception. He connected with 6 different receivers on this drive. So that was the other thing that I thought was good. You saw all these other players come up to make plays, and then you saw the ball spread around. So really, really good stuff by Derek Carr. But we also got really good stuff from Jake Haener, who led a touchdown drive of his own in his end of half simulation. Let's break that down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are your mental health non-negotiables? The things that you make sure that you're always doing for yourself. Maybe sometimes you never skip leg day. I like to cook. That's always a non-negotiable for me. And sometimes therapy can be a bit of a non-negotiable as well. When you spend your day off doing things like other work or having to deal with, your housework or chores and things like that, it doesn't really ever feel like a day off, does it? And it can be hard sometimes to remember your priorities. That's why I think therapy can be really, really helpful, because it becomes that non-negotiable for you, so that you're always doing that little check-in that you need for yourself. So I can't recommend enough, if you are interested in trying therapy, to make sure that you do so with BetterHelp. BetterHelp. If you're thinking about it, they're the place to try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule as well. No traffic, no waiting rooms, nothing like that. So never skip therapy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, family. Derek Carr was not the only quarterback to impress. Jake Haener also led an end-of-half simulation touchdown drive to take the lead at the end of the half. We also saw some nice stuff from Spencer Rattler, and I'll give you a couple other players that were standouts today as we recap day 10 of New Orleans Saints training camp. Don't forget to get your questions in for me. I'll use them in tomorrow's episode, get you some more context here from day 10. Feel free to ask whatever, and we'll get some of those answered as well. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On NFL 24/7 stream. All the news going on around the National Football League, you can find there with the local experts that actually cover the teams every day. You can find that over in the Locked On NFL YouTube page and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. All right, so I want to take a look now at Jake Haener. Jake Haener led his own touchdown drive at the end of half simulation that the team was doing. Jake Haener was running with the third team today. Remember, he and Spencer Rattler flipped. So yesterday, Spencer Rattler was with the third team. Jake Haener was with the second team. Today, Spencer Rattler was with the second team. Jake Haener was with the third team. And Jake Haener had a nice day today. I thought he was the better of the QB2s today, right? Of the QB2 competition that's going on. I thought this was really one of those days where he was the better quarterback. And the end of half simulation was a big reason why. Completed a pass to Jacob Kool-Aid to get them started. Then he ended up completing 2 straight passes to Michael Jacobson, the big body tight end, catching some big passes. One over the middle, another one to get out of bounds, which was nice. A couple of hookups with Stanley Morgan Jr. as well, who I thought had his best day of practice as a pass catcher today. Then we saw a couple of runs once they got into good position after the second Stanley Morgan Jr. reception, where Lawrence Johnson was also called for unnecessary roughness, a hit on a defenseless receiver that ended up pushing the ball all the way up to the 3. Jacob Kool-Aid up the middle twice, boom, touchdown. So it was really, really good stuff from Jake Haener to get them in position for that rushing touchdown, completing 5 of his 6 attempts. The only incompletion for him was on a pass attempt to, I believe it was Samson Nakua over on the right side. But outside of that, really, really good stuff from Jake Haener, who actually threw an interception at an earlier point in camp. So to see him bounce back, because it was his last of his first team reps, through an interception targeting A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry slipped, and then Shemar Jean-Charles ends up getting the interception off of that. Isaiah Foskey getting good pressure on that play as well. He bounced back from that. So instead of him just kind of having a bad day after throwing the interception early, he ended up coming back, having a pretty nice day in those other team drills, and then led that touchdown drive in the end of half simulation that I think was really, really good to see from Jake Haener. So a really nice day from him. The expectation is that Jake Haener will not be at practice tomorrow, will not be participating. He has the treatment for the skin cancer that he was diagnosed with not too long ago, and that is happening on Monday. So the expectation is that he will not be present on Monday. So we'll see what that means for the quarterback reps and how the team divvies that out. Do they go with just Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler? Does Taysom Hill finally get the opportunity to take some snaps as a passing quarterback? We've seen him take 2 snaps under center so far. Both of them were run plays. Do we finally see that change tomorrow when they go back to pads? So we'll see when it comes to all that. But really, really good stuff from Jake Haener. I don't want to leave Spencer Rattler out. Spencer Rattler only completed 5 of his 8 passes in his end of half drive simulation going up against that second team defense. The clock ended up expiring before he got an opportunity to even get them into a field goal opportunity and stuff like that. So he came up a little bit short there, but had a really, really nice set of completions over the course of the earlier portion of practice going up against the second team. Had a nice play action boot that he ended up getting towards the outside on. Had a really nice connection at an earlier point with A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry down the left sideline, beautifully placed ball on a back shoulder kind of situation with a few defenders around him. The thing about it was that Spencer Rattler placed it perfectly for A.T. Perry, who had Ugo Amadi and J.T. Gray all over him. So a pair of safeties all over him. And he still made the catch, but on his way down, he stepped out of bounds and then had the ball punched out. So technically, in a game situation, it simply would have been a big gain with the punch out coming too late by J.T. Gray. But when you're looking at that in practice, you still want to address the fact that A.T. Perry got the ball punched out. So it's going to be treated like a fumble in the film room, but it's also going to be treated like a good pass by Spencer Rattler because it was. It was an absolutely good pass there too. So I'm all about what we saw from the quarterbacks today for the most part. Jake Haener had the one interception that he threw, and that was Shemar Jean-Charles, who just made a great break on the ball, undercut the receiver, and got that one done. So Shemar Jean-Charles is another guy that was a standout to me. And I think he's the fifth cornerback on the roster. You look at Marshawn Lattimore, Pauslon, Adebo, Alontae Taylor, and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Those are your top four. Right now, I have a really hard time leaving 27, Shemar Jean-Charles, off of the list as one of the five cornerbacks that will make the roster. I just think he plays inside. He plays outside. He's got good instincts. He's a good special teamer. Just does a lot of things well. Had a really nice day of practice today, constantly working. Dennis Allen really likes what he's seen from him as well. So really good stuff from Shemar Jean-Charles. And then the other defensive back that stood out today was Kool-Aid McKinstry. The rookie corner just keeps popping off of the field. During the simulated 2-minute drive with Spencer Rattler rolled over to the right side, ended up trying to get a pass in to Dallin Holker, and got a little bit of pressure from Carl Granderson, so just kind of forced the ball out a little bit too quickly. And I'm going to talk about this with Spencer Rattler here in just a sec. Forced the ball out a little bit too quickly. And in doing so, Kool-Aid McKinstry was able to undercut the route and break up the pass, but almost had the interception, and it would have gone the other way for 6. So that would have been a big flip going into the half, already down. And then instead of picking up points, surrendering points 7 to the other direction. That would have been tough. So good thing that the interception didn't happen for Spencer Rattler, but still a very good play for Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think there's one thing that will immediately make Spencer Rattler better, and it's simply experience against these NFL pass rushers. Right now, he bails out of the pocket a little bit too quickly for me. It feels kind of like Ian Book in his early days with the Saints, or really even his later days with the Saints. The difference is that Spencer Rattler will understand eventually, hey, I don't have to bail out of the pocket as quickly as I feel like I do right now. Ian Book seemed like he never really got comfortable with that. Spencer Rattler is going to get back to that place of composure and everything like that we saw from him in Oklahoma. We saw from him in South Carolina, all that kind of stuff. Biggest thing for him right now is just to get acclimated with dealing under pressure. Once he does that, he's going to take a huge step. Like just getting that out of the way, it's going to allow him to take a huge step. So I still like what we're seeing from both of those guys. I love what we're seeing from Derek Carr in this offense so far. Just hope that they can bridge the gap into the regular season. All right, so that gives us a couple of guys that were standouts. I want to talk about the offensive line real quick before we get to the injuries. More and more injuries. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 more injuries to add to their ever-growing injury list for you here today. But before we get to that, let me focus on something else that was nice today. The offensive line, I thought, performed well. Listen, sometimes when you go through 5 days of padded practices, and then you go into a day to where you're no longer in padded practices, or really you go into any number of consecutive padded practices, and you go from that to being back in shorts and shells, the defensive line will typically play a little bit light, right? Like, I just want the pads back on kind of thing, right? These guys love to hit, all that. So maybe that's what this was. But for the second day in a row, I saw some nice stuff from the offensive line. And so what I tried to focus on mostly was not did they stop the pass rush, but how was the hand placement? How was the timing? How were the pass sets? How were the run sets? All these other things. And I thought that I saw a lot of positives in that area. I'm not going to say the offensive line performed well. I'm not going to say that they got better overnight. I'm not going to say any of that. I'm just saying there was a lot of good to take away from what we saw from some of the things that the offensive lines have to do that are non-dependent upon the defensive line. Where do you put your hands? How do you shoot your hands? Where's your power? How's your anchor? All these other things. I thought that they did a lot of those things well. I saw a lot of that stuff that looked good. And then getting downfield and blocking and all these other things, like all of those things to me, which have nothing to do with the defensive line. It's all about offensive line technique. There were a lot of positives that I took from looking at that. So I just want to add that in there as well. All right, coming up next, the New Orleans Saints list of injuries just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can make every moment more. The New Orleans Saints will open up against the Carolina Panthers in just a few weeks when the toe meets the leather to kick off the NFL season in week 1. In that game, the Saints are favored by 4.5 points, and the over-under is currently set at 40.5 points. So they're expecting the Saints, FanDuel, to win this game right around 23-18. You think it's going to be a wider margin of victory than that? You think the game's going to be a little bit tighter than that? Or maybe you think that the Saints won't have what it takes to knock off a division opponent to open up the season. I think they do, but maybe you don't. You can find all of that and more over at FanDuel if you want to get in on the action. There's also the MLB, WNBA as it rolls around, the Olympics, boxing, so much more going on around the world of sports. And the sports never stop sporting all summer long over at FanDuel. And right now, all summer long, they're giving all customers a free boost or bonus daily. That means there's something for everyone every day, all summer long over at FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel.com now to get started making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are doing whatever the opposite of getting healthy is. We appreciate you very much for being here for another episode of Locked On Saints. I've tried not to be an alarmist around the injuries, but it's hard not to at least call concern to it. Every single day, it's been 10 days of practice. Every single day, there have been new injuries learned about or new injuries happening on that field. And I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't understand how there's not more concern about it. I don't get it. But whatever it is, the injuries are still happening. So let me update you on where the New Orleans Saints are. We're going to dive into the new injuries from today that we learned about. We're going to dive into some of the things that haven't yet gotten better. And I'll give you the full sort of roll call of the players that were not present at today's practice. So let's start off with the new injuries. Today, we did not see Pete Werner, New Orleans Saints linebacker. We did not see defensive end Payton Turner, nor did we see defensive tackle Nathan Shepard. If you caught yesterday's episode, you're not surprised about Nathan Shepard. Nathan Shepard ended up coming off the field yesterday, getting his foot looked at by a trainer, did not leave the practice field, did stay on the practice field, but did not participate in drills after that. Turns out it's a toe injury for Nathan Shepard. Turns out it is also, again, a toe injury for Payton Turner. And Dennis Allen believes that it's the same toe that gave Payton Turner issues in his recent past, but doesn't sound like he's as worried about it right now. So maybe it's not as bad, but still a re-aggravated situation. We'll see where things go with Payton Turner, but not the right situation for him. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay on the field, and he has to contribute. Pete Werner missed practice with a shoulder injury. I'm going to bet anything that is them being overly cautious around Pete Werner, just like they have been overly cautious around Demario Davis, and just like I believe they have been overly cautious around Marshon Lattimore, and they also talked about their caution when it came to Rashid Shaheed as well. So those were the three. Oh, sorry, and then one more new injury. Pauslon Adebo was out at practice at the beginning of the day, testing things out. He was experiencing some groin tightness, is what Dennis Allen described. And so tested things out before the day. They decided to be overly cautious with him and sit him out today as well. So he did not participate in practice with what I would call then a groin injury. We were expecting the possibility of Rashid Shaheed returning to the practice field here today on Sunday after missing practice on Saturday with hamstring tightness. It was another precautionary situation where Dennis Allen said that they held him out of practice to take caution, but that their expectation was that they would try to get him back out on the field on Sunday. That did not happen. He was not out on the field on Sunday. We'll see if he's back out on the field tomorrow on Monday when the pads go back on. So that is your injury update for Rashid Shaheed, and 4 new injuries: Pete Werner, shoulder; Pauslon Adebo, groin; Payton Turner and Nathan Shepard, toe injuries. So those are going to be other ones that we are going to be watching out for. In addition to those players, we also did not see at practice today wide receivers Equanimeous St. Brown or Bub Means, both of which have missed what is effectively an entire week, it feels like, of practice now. Kendre Miller still has not been able to get back out on the field. The team has continued to be cautious with Demario Davis. Dennis Allen kind of admitted to that today, saying basically like, look, Demario Davis is proven. It's training camp, not rushing him back. And honestly, I agree. I agree with that one. I would say the same thing about Marshon Lattimore, if I'm being completely honest. We also have not seen Nick Saldiveri back, nor have we seen Trajan Jeffcoat back. Trajan Jeffcoat not a super surprising situation there, considering the nature of his injury, right? The dislocated elbow, all those other things. We did see off to the side today, cornerback Marshon Lattimore, linebacker Jalen Ford, who was wearing a jersey for the first time, and then Tano Passanio was wandering around. And we also saw Juwan Johnson after practice continuing to work and get back. He's running routes, catching footballs, all this other stuff. So good news on Juwan Johnson. I think he's getting closer. So those are all the players that missed practice today, that were not able to be out at practice today. I think some of them precautionary, like DeMario, Rashid Shaheed, Pete Werner, Pauslon, Adebo, and Marshon Lattimore. I think you can all file under precautionary. But some of these other guys, the younger guys that need to be out on the field, like Nick Saldiveri, who got a name mentioned from Dennis Allen today, like Kendre Miller, who Dennis Allen called out the second day of practice, and some others, they've got to be out there on the field, and they've got to be able to stay there. So those are the ones that I would be more concerned about right now. But when it comes to the veterans, a light day today, following all those padded practices, a day off coming on Tuesday. I can see why being precautious or being cautious and taking precaution, makes sense for those players. But all in all, just so many injuries, so many injuries here so far through New Orleans Saints training camp. There were a couple of players that did get light days today, including everything, Taysom Hill. I don't know what position to give him, so I'll just call him everything. And then offensive lineman Ali Udoh also got a light day. Ali Udoh, of course, is returning from his quadriceps injury. So typically when you have guys that are returning from injury, they get a little bit of a lighter day. And then Taysom Hill was just given a lighter kind of veteran day today. So that's what we saw there. Couple little news and notes for you. Charlie Smith went 8 of 10 today. He missed 2 extra points, one of them in field goal kicking drills, another one in that end of half simulation where Derek Carr led the touchdown drive. He missed that extra point. So 2 extra points missed by Charlie Smith. I believe 3 extra points now missed over the course of training camp. And then we also saw him absolutely drill one from 62 that probably would have been good from 70. So shrug. I don't know what to tell you. Missing 2 extra points is big, but is making a 62-yard field goal with a lot of leg to spare right down the middle with the wind in your favor, is that better? I don't know. I think that the missed extra points are more concerning, but still a really, really good day for the kicker, who right now I have as, one moment, I have the number, 30 of 37 so far here throughout camp. So that's what I've got for him so far. And then I've got Blake Groupie, I believe, at 33 of 38, if memory serves. So they're not super far separated. Chris Olave took a couple snaps out of the backfield, which was really nice to see. There was one snap where he took a snap out of the backfield with Alvin Kamara lined up again in the slot. So more slot work for Alvin Kamara, more wrinkles within the backfield. So really good stuff to see there. And then I thought Cedric Wilson had a good day. He just worked his way back yesterday. It was good to see him back, making a couple of nice plays, had a nice catch and run at one point, had a good play from Derek Carr during the end of half draft, during the end of half simulation and everything. So I was a big fan of what we saw from Cedric Wilson today, a day that I thought that he needed to back up another good day in his return yesterday. So as these wide receivers continue to take shape, if I had to pick a wide receiver room right now, I'd probably go Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Cedric Wilson, and then Mason Tipton. And then I just have to get a 5th guy. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Maybe you go Stanley Morgan Jr. Maybe you roll the dice again with A.T. Perry. But no one's claiming the spot right now. So still a lot of work to be done when it comes to that position. But that's okay. There's time for all that. And of course, there's the game upcoming against the Arizona Cardinals, where I think you'll probably see one of these wide receivers absolutely separate themselves while the top guys are in street close off on the side, because I don't think any of them need to play at all. All right, coming up later on, or not later on today, but coming up tomorrow, I'll answer some of your questions from the chat. So make sure you drop some questions in, so I'll get to those. And if you have any other questions after listening to the show later, you can go ahead and hit me up however you like. And we'll also dive in a little bit into, like, as the team moves into game preparation, what are some of the things that we're expecting to see? We saw end of half simulation today. Will we see end of game simulation tomorrow? Those types of things. We'll break all that down in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us your first listen of the day every day. And for your second listen, make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL Scouting with Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs. Simply just become a smarter football fan. Those guys do smart football talk like nobody's business. Incredible daily content over at the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast. Make sure you check that out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Appreciate you very much for being here, whether you caught the show live or you're catching it later, whether it's your first time or your next time. Thank you very much for the love and support. And of course, thank you for making us a part of your day, part of your routine. If you see me, please say hi. Need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you find me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.